Hey, welcome to the Used Car EV Disruption panel. This is one that I know a lot of people have been waiting for because as much conversation and airplay takes place with regards to new car EVs, the reality is as new car sale penetration goes up, the impact and the opportunity within the used car market is also going to go up almost on a lagging basis, but it's going to travel at the same rate and grow at the same rate literally forevermore. So I am so fortunate to be joined by four very distinct human beings here that have massive expertise. And I'm talking frontline, first-person experience. So I've got Brian Kramer, and Brian is the general manager of AccuTrade and also executive vice president of Cars Commerce. Brian has a very unique perspective. He sees the market search side as well as he's very deep into the used car side. And most of you know Brian as being one of the foremost authorities when it comes to used cars. I'm also joined by Jimmy Douglas, who's a former Tesla executive. And Jimmy now has a company called Plug. And Plug is the first, and to my knowledge, only EV-focused, EV-dedicated platform where you can buy EVs for your frontline lot. And then we happen to have two trailblazers joining us as well. We've got Alex Lawrence and we've got John, who are technically competitors, but they're on opposite ends of the country. John sitting out there. Where are you, John? In Carolina?
Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
Virginia, yes, Virginia. And then we've got Alex, who's in Salt Lake City. Both of these gentlemen see the opportunity, frankly saw it probably before most people in this country, and said, hey, I'm not going to just dabble or stick my toes in. I'm going all in Vegas style. And they've created the first used car, EV-focused used car lots in the United States. And they're doing very, very well. So gentlemen, to all of you, thank you for joining. We really appreciate you giving us your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start off with Brian. Brian, you are, like me, you're a bit of a data junkie. We both have a problem, let's face it. We're addicted to this business. We're addicted to data, and we're addicted to helping dealers outperform competition and achieve the highest results
and just
possible.
Curious in general.
Oh my God, the curiosity of 5-year-olds. And we love it that way. So I've got to pick on you first in a very positive way. I mentioned you've got this unique perspective. You're seeing literally the search side of the equation in a massive way. I think if I remember right, Cars has something like maybe 2.7, 2.8 million people jumping into that marketplace on a regular basis. Is that accurate?
2.7 million used cars on there, 28 million unique visitors.
There you go. So 28 million unique visitors and 2.7 million used cars. So my question number one is, what are you seeing on the marketplace side? Let's start there when it comes to search. One of the things I thought was really interesting is two states that most people would think of not necessarily leaning in on EVs, Texas and Florida. Cars Commerce put out some data probably 9 months ago that showed that both of those states are now in the top 5 when it comes to search. So what are you seeing when it comes to search, and how interesting is it to you that two of the largest car markets in the United States are now, seems to be, if not the dealers, the clients seem to be leaning in on considering EVs?
So we're seeing a lot of interesting things, and everything is surprising to me. And I'll say the first thing is on our marketplace, 4% of our overall searches, of those 28 million, or the visitors, 4% of them are looking for EVs. Now, when we then look at how many of them transact, or how does that all occur, it's very interesting because the percentage of how many are sold, or how many are listed are more, and how many are sold are more than the 4%. So then I ask myself, well, how is that coming to be? If they're not looking for an EV, what's happening with that? And we're still digging into this, but we're trying to figure out and I'm sure everybody else on the panel can talk more in depth as to what percentage of the dealers are selling EVs. And obviously there's a small percentage selling a very large amount, like the Pareto principle. But I think that those dealers are good at switching customers from an ICE to an EV or vice versa, because from a price point standpoint, everybody's looking for $25,000 or $30,000 and under vehicles. And when you take a look at like Tesla Model S's, Tesla Model 3s, there's a tremendous amount of vehicles that are 40, 50,000 miles, 2016s, 2017s that are in the teens from what we're AccuTrade's appraising the vehicles at. And we don't see a lot of people that are, a lot of dealers are talking about how affordability is such an issue these days. Payments are such an issue. And from a payment loan to value standpoint, those are some of the best values out there. New car leases in the same way. But I think everybody's still so hung up on trying to find, those ICE vehicles and their rare, Corollas. There's not that many out there. Jeep just got rid of all their low price vehicles. So now I think the starting price for Jeep is $50,000. So from an affordability standpoint, if somebody comes into a Ford store or Toyota store looking for a used vehicle, it's a perfect switch car. And I think if I was back in retail today, there's certain cars that drive SRPs, there's certain cars that drive BDPs, but when they actually arrive at the lot, I forget what the, latest data says, but it was, last I heard, was 72% come in and purchase something other than what they intended to buy once they start looking. So I would set up, if I'm a used car dealer, I would set up sets and subsets with an ICE car as the lead car and an EV option in that set as a payment option. I can't get the payment on this, but I can get to it on this. Would be my 2 cents.
So just one thing before I want to jump over to Jimmy. Isn't it fair to say a couple things? So if you got 4% of the people searching and more than that, a higher percentage than that buying, it's probably very fair to say that that delta between the two represents people that had a consideration for an EV walking in, maybe didn't make a final decision, but at least had it in the back of their mind as a consideration and possibly were pleasantly surprised from the affordability perspective that they can get what most people would see as very modern tech, the most modern tech, right? And the benefits that they might see as an EV, the technology in the EV, the performance in an EV for a price that's frankly less expensive than the average ICE cars that are oftentimes found in auctions. Is that fair?
That's very fair. And actually, let me just tag on to that. What I see is I go in person around dealerships, right? Because I talk to a lot of dealers, and a lot of them are extremely innovative. And I think there's some geographical sense of it. But like, for instance, where I live in Naples, Florida, the last cross-sell report I saw, Tesla was outselling everybody except for Toyota in this market, all other makes, which what blew my mind. Sometimes 2 Ford stores or 2 Honda stores combined, it's outselling the whole brand. And yeah, every single one but Toyota, which was fascinating to me. The 4th best-selling vehicle in the whole country is a Tesla Model Y. I would think it was a RAV4 or a Camry, but it goes F-150, Silverado, Ram 1500, Tesla Model Y. And I think that this is something that needs to be talked about, because a lot of dealers, that doesn't show up on the market share reports. For a long time, it didn't show up on the OEM market share reports. So everybody's like, well, that's an electric vehicle. That's not a real competitor. It's not a real car. So they just look the other way. Well, Tesla's been slowly grabbing share. It's obviously coming, but there's so many dealers that it's a couple of different buckets that they fall into. Either their staff is resistant on learning the product. So when somebody does come in inquiring about an EV, they, work really hard to get back into their comfort zone and flip them back to an ICE and tell them why EV doesn't make sense, just because of a lack of taking the time to understand it and learn it. There's a lack of understanding of the recon process. And when they take one in on trade, and charging it for delivery, charging it for test drives, what's the process for that? Process for subscription updates, properly identifying the options of equipment on the vehicle, or knowing how to identify that. Having, like we have an OBD2 plug that has the different pin connector. It's like the 9-pin for Tesla. We can do it on an ICE vehicle. There's an adapter that goes onto it, but most people don't do that. So I think the training, the infrastructure, not just the facilities, are critical. But I think that at the end of the day, the dealer has to want to do it. And I think it's very similar to a service drive process or an internet sales process. And it feels just like when people were setting up BDCs and internet departments in the 2000s. That
the anti-e-commerce crowd.
you got to treat them differently. You got to find people that are knowledgeable to take those phone calls, to set the appointments and be able to do a demonstration with you there. And I don't see that across the country.
Well, let's use that as a jumping off point, and I want to move over to Jimmy. Jimmy, first and foremost, you have some rather interesting data based on your position, just like Brian. And I want to ask a couple questions from you. Number one, what percentage of dealers essentially are embracing this opportunity? And how does that translate to their results and their sales? And the second thing is, how much does it matter in those dealerships? Is it a hallmark of those dealerships that the sales associates themselves are very much leaning in? It's not just incidental contact with EVs. It's not just another model, but they actually are very adept at presenting them and very knowledgeable about that product.
Great questions. And before I jump in, something you just said, Brian, really resonated with me, is how there are similarities drawn between this phenomenon and when internet sales became a thing. And I'm starting to wonder what's wrong with me, because I was one of those very first internet sales people. I was the first one at a VW dealer, where I started as a service advisor when I was putting myself through college. And here we are. Now I'm chasing after another one of those things that isn't necessarily readily embraced from day zero.
First one worked out okay, though, Jimmy. So,
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah, the internet turned out to be a thing. So great question, Dave. So what we're seeing is there's definitely a small number of dealers who are moving a majority of the used EV market by our count. And our data is not perfect, but it's pretty good. We're observing a couple of thousand rooftops that are moving as much as 2/3 of the entire used EV market. And when you narrow it down even farther, there's a really small percent, about 3%, that are moving 30% of that market all by themselves. And most of these stores don't look just like John and Alex. Granted, John and Alex are in that category, but there are franchise stores like of every make you would think of. Like there's Chevy stores, Mini stores, Jeep stores. Like it really comes down to the culture within the store, and if the executive staff has decided to embrace used EVs as part of their product line. And very often it's not just their own OEM, right? Like they expand outside from that. And the fundamental difference that I've noticed in the data between a dealer that will have at least 10 of these in stock at any given point in time is they move them a lot faster than everybody else. Depending on what's happening in the market broadly, I've observed anywhere between 25 to 40% velocity delta, which is very significant in today's floor plan, high interest rate financing environment. But also, it's a testament to the need to think through EVs in a fundamentally different lens in terms of business model. I've seen plenty of very smart people who are a lot more experienced than me in used car retail talk about turn time on inventory. And I've seen numbers thrown around. I've seen 60 days. I've seen 45 days. The dealers that are really good at selling used EVs are selling them in under 3 weeks pretty consistently. And that's their best weapon against volatility, because it's a more volatile asset. And it's not just a function of one automaker dropping its prices. Like we just talked right before we started here of how the tax credits and how they change from one year to the next can affect one quarter versus another in terms of EV adoption broadly. But there's also the technological advancement curve, because right now we're really early in this game, and a brand new model with new technology is probably a lot more attractive to somebody that's looking to buy if they're an early adopter. And if you relate it to buying an iPhone, how much is your iPhone worth when the new one comes out? So it's a whole new set of factors, and weathering that volatility is a game of velocity. And in order to do that, in order to sell them that quickly, you need to know how to sell them. So that comes down to the culture within any given store fully embracing them. And this is where Alex and John are absolute masters. Generally speaking, and I won't speak for them, but what I've observed is that every member of their teams will draw from firsthand experience and speak very confidently to every customer that walks through that door into what turns into a very consultative and educational sales process, almost like they're not selling at all. And the ability to do that in a way that's authentic draws back into what Brian said, which is it's cultural embracement and willingness to climb that learning curve. But you got to be ready to do that. And not everybody needs to be ready to do that right now because the market's pretty small. But at the same time, the opportunity is tremendous. And one of the most interesting stats that I saw is that used EVs were accounting for about 1% of the used car market at some point in time last year. And around the same time, they were 1.7% of the wholesale market. which said to me that dealers were receiving these things and dumping them into the wholesale lanes if they weren't comfortable retailing them, which is arbitrage for my friends here on the left side of my screen.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in right there, and thank you for sharing that. Really insightful information, John. Based on that, and Alex, and just the very businesses that you're in, your experiences, are dealers significantly underestimating the opportunity in the used car market that EVs present?
And I'll go first here. There was an article that came out a few weeks back, the Washington Post, and it asked the question, are dealers perhaps, the hurdle that needs to be crossed to, accelerate adoption in the EV business. And I've been in this business for 25 years. I know a lot of dealers, and they all reached out to me as if I wrote the article and were like, this article this is unfair. We definitely understand the EV opportunity. And what I told all of them is that, like, I do appreciate that, I've seen a shift in, ownership and dealer principals who do understand that there is an opportunity out there. It is not trickled down. It is not trickled down to an acquisition strategy, stocking and managing that inventory and training the team to, deliver an experience that an EV buyer is looking for. And something that, Brian and David, you both talked about is, buyers, as they enter the market today, are considering an EV, whether they ultimately go that way or not. And if their interaction with the dealer is poor on the EV side, they may just step away from that opportunity altogether. And so what we hear from buyers who come into Recharge today that have had an experience elsewhere, it's been frustrating for them. And I'll, we go on and on. I'm sure Alex and I have 2 hours of stories of things that we've heard from people who have had experiences out there in the real world. But there's a lot of room for improvement to deliver an experience and answer the questions that people want to have answered before they make a decision to buy either an ICE, an EV, or plug-in hybrid.
Hey, Alex, and thank you, John. Alex, same question, and I'm going to expand that a little bit. Number one, are dealers underestimating or massively underestimating the opportunity in the used car EV market? Second thing is, to John's point, is there a bit of worlds colliding here? Because when people come in looking for used car EVs, my experience is that they have the same sensibilities, the same expectations as somebody buying a new car EV, which means, interestingly, they're not just shopping for the vehicle itself, they're literally shopping for a different, almost a transformative buying experience or ownership experience. Is that fair?
Yeah. So with regard to the first part, I really think it's a tale of two cities or a tale of many cities. The answer really depends on geography, in my opinion. The closer you are to the coast, in some cases, like these large states, Texas and Florida, well, Florida is a coastal state, demand and demographic is just different. If I were, so to answer your question, am I massively underestimating the opportunity? If I'm a dealer that's kind of in between those areas, probably not. The demand is low, if you look at the data, or lower. And I understand why. Charging infrastructure is not where it needs to be. A lot of them need trucks that, do work and that aren't as much for kind of city dwellers and people like me that, I take my truck to the dump, which is 20 minutes away, and that's about it. And so Ford Lightning is the perfect vehicle for that. And so, it's kind of an it depends answer. I think it's where the dealer is located. Now, do I think that's going to stay that way? No, but I think that the adoption curve is going to be slower in different pockets and regions of the country. And so the answer there is different depending on where you're located. If you're in those other areas or closer to those other areas, and to be clear, Utah is not coastal. If you look at the numbers, Utah is still a bit of a laggard compared to our friends to the west of us. And that's true in almost every case. Everything cool starts in California and then makes it to Utah about 2 or 3 years later.
I started in California, it should be noted.
There you go. Come on over. We're about ready for you, David. So, yeah. So I mean, it's not, there's a history of this stuff, but I mean, it's the innovator's dilemma, right? You said it earlier. Oh, they kind of, there's little electric car company and we're not going to worry about them. And, they're cheap cars. They're not well made. They don't do this. They don't do that. And then they start gobbling market share, working their way upstream to where, we just learned it's the fourth most popular car in America. So, I mean, my feeling is regardless of where you're located, you can do well, but you've either got to be all in or all out right now. I don't think there's a dabbling spot at the moment. It's too painful. It's too risky. And I've talked to so many dealers that have lost so much money on EVs in the recent past. And I kind of want to say, well, what did you expect? You're buying assets you don't understand, and they're being sold by people that don't like them and don't understand them. And so that's a terrible combo for any business to find success selling a product or service. And that leads into your second question, right? Do people expect a different experience? I mean, I'm by far the baby of this group. I've been in the car business for 4 years, and I've only been in the car dealership business like seriously for the last 2 years. I was building a marketplace and doing online stuff for EVs before I transitioned to my focus on EV auto as a dealer. And so, I mean, yes, I think that's true though of ICE dealers too. I mean, the people expect a better buying experience, direct to consumer. Tesla's obviously pioneering that. Fisker just announced yesterday they're done with that. They're going with dealers. I actually think it's for a different reason. I think it's a Hail Mary because Fiskers aren't doing very well. That's how I see it. But I mean, I think, and then, Hyundai's going through doing this test with Amazon and things like that. So yeah, the demographic, if you look at it for people that are the early adopters of EVs, I think they do expect a better and different buying experience. They don't want to be sold to, they want to be educated. They want to be consulted. They want to be helped. And, our experience here, which is a small percent of the nation, is that's exactly what we're seeing.
Isn't it fair, guys, that you just brought up the early adopter tag? We're well past the early adopters when it comes to the new car side of EVs, right? And perhaps that's what's fueling some of the sagging demand on the new car side. And I think part of that is also, in all likelihood, as Glenn Mercer said brilliantly, we haven't had our Model T moment. Our Model T moment is likely to be a $30,000 vehicle that has a 400-mile plus range, and you're going to see all of a sudden sales pop up. But aren't we essentially at the same point now on used cars where we're in the early adopter phase on the used car side, where we were perhaps 5 or 8 years ago on the new car side? And so wouldn't that plus the fact that you've got 40% plus of the people in the country saying we are considering an EV, not saying I'm going to buy it for sure, but 40% are saying I'm considering it as my next vehicle. And to Brian's point earlier, 4% are searching, a higher percentage are buying, 8% roughly of new cars are EVs. So doesn't that mean there's a lot of people out there that are considering it that, perhaps on the used car side, because of the affordability factor, because of the perceived value they get, that we're on that early adopter part of the market. So I'll ask any of you, where do you think we're going to be as we get through 2024? We're going to see a doubling of the EV models that are available from roughly 50 to 100. And that means search is going to likely go way up on EVs. And how do you think that translates to the used car EV market?
I'll take that from a search standpoint. I don't see, I'm objective. I have to be neutral on this stuff and not look at, do I like EVs or the politics and all that stuff, the taxes and the rebates and all that sort of thing. I just look at market day supply, average days on market. That's how you reduce volatility, remove the fear factor from used car dealers, and not just train the sales staff, but what are the SEO opportunities first? Because I don't think that everybody's broken down, okay, how do I go to market with EVs and what should I be doing? So highlighting range and charging. Do you have the pages on your website? Longest EV range, fast charging stations near me, EV charging at home. That's what's currently driving the highest amount of SEO benefit. Do you know your audience? You're targeting niche demographics. Recently at NAMAD, they said that 81%, I don't know, three of the panelists on here would know better than I do, but they said it at NAMED that 81% of EV transactions are conducted by Asian Americans. If you're not, geo-fencing downtown areas, areas that are not rural, where everybody's going to be pushing back more, the dealers are going to be pushing back more, develop charging infrastructures, and you're just focusing. I think it has to be a lot more hyper-focused. If you don't have those pages on your website, what's your retargeting campaign when it comes to EVs? And simplifying incentives, educating consumers with videos and SEO, video SEO content. Okay, here's currently what's going on. And then having it link into your website with a simple, to where it's so relevant that other dealers are going to use it, on your website to show it to consumers because you've simplified it so much. Social media strategies with backlinks, connecting all of this together. But I think that the number, side-by-side comparisons, EV versus ICE, and then let the consumer make the decision. Because I think that so many dealers are like, oh, you're forcing it down.
It's not a, if you think about it, everybody, that's not a bad deal, right? I mean, if they choose EV, awesome, they win, you win. If they choose ICE, hey, they win, you win. Either way, somebody's saying yes in my book, right?
I think one of the biggest fears, though, that everybody has is these trades. And one of the things, not to, no pun intended, Jimmy, but plug, AccuTrade, is we provide more EV guaranteed values than anyone else. So, I mean, like 20% more than the other competitors. So without that safety net, I mean, CarMax isn't aggressive in that space. I'm talking 0 to 3 year old vehicles. Same thing with Carvana. And it might just, right now we're not unable to write an offer at this time. The percentage of that is a really large number. So without that confidence, if I'm a dealer, I'm going to be scared as well, because is this going to be the next $20,000 or $30,000 loss I'm going to take?
Hey, I'm going to go back to Jimmy. First of all, what was the number of used EVs in the marketplace, would you estimate today?
Just a little bit north of 20,000.
23,000. I was on Auto Trader recently, and I think it was around the same, low 20s. But that, again, is likely to grow, right? You've got cars coming off of lease. You got people trading in cars. And the thing is, you may have, EV people trading in on ICE cars or trading in on other EV cars, traditional OEMs. So that number is likely to grow on a quarter-over-quarter basis, isn't it, going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. No, the used EV market size will grow nominally in 2024 from 2023 from the data that I'm looking at, but then it'll basically double in 2025. And it's just a function of that.
Would you have any idea what the average dealer sells, number of EVs, an average franchise dealer today sells in EVs? Is it monthly? Is it 1 or 2?
Yeah, for sure. There's only a couple of thousand in the data that we're observing that really have any, but the vast majority of those only have 1 or 2.
And Alex.
So.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Say again.
No, go ahead.
So the average dealer, if you include the whole population of dealers, including the ones that don't have any, which is most dealers, then yeah, that's probably about what you'll see. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Well, I just wanted to contrast that really quick. Alex, how many used EVs has your lot? What do you typically sell in a month?
I don't publicly share that.
You don't?
Yeah, I will just say that.
Is it a lot more than 1 or 2 in a month?
Yeah, it's a lot more. And I think what matters to me is, we've been profitable every month for 4 years. And so amidst the highs and the lows and the good and the bad and the big price swings and all that stuff, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I am saying that because we're all in, we've been very close to and aware of changes quickly that we haven't been caught. I mean, again, I'm jinxing myself, but I'll give you an example. The big price drops that Elon did with Tesla, which I would imagine Brian and Jimmy and John too, who talked to a lot of dealers. I think that's a lot of the PTSD in this market, is because they took some of their biggest losses ever on cars. I only lost money on 2 cars during that entire thing. And one of them I just kept and turned into a company car. So it's not been a booked cash loss. It's just on the balance sheet. Right now, I paid $150,000 for a Tesla Model S Plaid, all decked out, and you can imagine what that's worth today. Yeah, but it's a great company car that I will drive into the ground, which is another issue that a lot of people think.
Brian will give you 120 grand for that car.
Yeah, right. That'd be great. What do you give me? What do you guarantee me for that, Brian?
It isn't that, I promise you.
But it's also a challenge. There's so much negative equity in a lot of these cars that they can't get rid of them, and so it's impacting the people. Want to get a new one. They want to, the brand new Model 3 that just is available now in North America is a significant upgrade. It's the exact same price as the previous one a week ago. But if you bought one a year ago for $20,000 more, it's not the exact same price. And you've got an inferior vehicle that you don't want, but you can't eat that negative equity to get it. So that created a whole nother thing. So anyway, yeah, it's significantly more than that, but I'm focused more on profitability than I am number of units.
Hey, John, what do you think from your perspective at Recharge as a EV focused resale lot? What do you think are the keys to Alex's point, to having sustainable success from the sales side? And what do you think would be the key recommendations that you would make to franchise dealers out there? Especially, and Alex is right. I mean, the closer to the coast, obviously you have much higher adoption rates. California, 25-30%, for example, versus Nebraska or South Dakota, obviously in low single digits. But, and I also hearken back, by the way, Brian, I'll jump to you next, to old Dave Smith in Kellogg, Idaho, that had a population of 4,500 people. He sold twice as many cars a year as there was people in the city. And he did it by doing what? He went out and bought a bunch of transports, was the first guy to believe in the power of the internet, and started selling cars all over the planet, became the number one GM store in America in a town of 4,500 people, and one of the top CDJR stores as well. We live at a time, obviously, where I'm not fenced in by geographically physical limitations. I could sell in EVs. I could become, frankly, an EV dealer in Nebraska and prospectively become the biggest volume EV dealer in the country. It's possible. But what would you say are recommendations, are the keys, John, to dealers, franchise dealers, to be able to really embrace this opportunity and take advantage of it?
Sure. So I'll join Alex in not sharing sales numbers, but we'll say that, we sell about 80% of our inventory every month.
80%.
80% of our inventory. Okay. And certainly a lot of that just ties back to being a good operator and managing the inventory, a lot of the ways that Brian could probably talk about for an hour here. We do all those things right. But I've sat on stage beside Jimmy and made the comment that Alex just made, which is, dealers need to decide that they're 100% in or 100% out. And I've thought a lot about that comment since I made it the first time. And I just don't know that there's 100% out. You talk about the search, the number of customers that are considering an EV purchase, and then the searches that are out there. I think you're deciding to be almost out of the business if you decide that you're out. Now you may be 100% out on owning inventory, but you have to be 100% prepared to, answer questions and guide, potential buyers through the process. So the things that, I would recommend are certainly make the decision to be in, but that experience that EV buyers are looking for is differentiated from a traditional, purchase. This is a different consideration than they've made in the past. The questions that they're going to ask are different than the ones that they've asked about the GMC Yukon that they bought in the past. They don't have the comfort of knowing that, there's millions of these vehicles on the road and that they'll last forever. And, they just need some reassurance. They need to understand, how the technology works, and they need somebody to guide them through that. And so, I don't think it's,
So one of the keys, if I'm hearing you right, John, one of the keys, whether you're all in or not, if you're going to participate, unless you're comfortable saying, hey, listen, I can live with a reduction of 5% of my sales from last year because 5% of the used cars in my market were EVs. I either have to resolve that I'm going to live without those sales, or at baseline, at the very least, I need to find at least one or two sales associates that are they themselves leaning in, are pro EV or fans of EVs, and are most importantly trained and educated on the EV market. True?
100%. I would contend that your loss of sales won't be equal to the inventory shift. It's going to be greater because the number of customers that you're going to be available to service is going to reduce if you're not prepared to answer their questions if they're in the market looking for each. So,
Point. Hey, Brian. So I'll pitch that question to you. For a franchise dealer, whether you're sitting in Texas, Florida, California, New York, obviously these are high volume, Oregon, Washington, those kinds of states, maybe Virginia, versus dealers that are a little bit inland, say in Atlanta, Salt Lake City, so forth, or whether you're in the Midwest, where there's frankly 1 or 2% of sales in your market. First of all, is it wise to be all out? And secondarily, what recommendations, what should dealers do? What must they do in order to fully optimize the opportunity while protecting themselves from downside risk?
Well, I think we went through this in the early 2000s with hybrids, and everybody was pushing back on it a lot. And then there was diesel hybrids with Mercedes-Benz in the late 2000s. And everybody, it's always scared, and change is always comfortable. And the majority of people I experience are risk averse, and there's safety in sticking to what you know and not going over there. And especially, no different than Alex was saying about the resale value hits. I mean, I know some big groups that took a almost 8-digit hit before last year when all those drops were coming, because there's such a lag. And when everybody goes, they get stung, like on Ford Lightnings recently, and they take it to the auction and the no sales. And we start seeing the no sale, which is more important on EVs and days on market than market day supply. So when we start seeing the amount of vehicles not selling approaching 80%, which is what happens, the bubble's about to pop. That's kind of the trigger, the pin, if you will, that pops the balloon, right? So we can see it with our data that we share with dealers. We can see it right before it happens so that they can get off. We also see when it drops from a 217 days on market sporadically, and it happens typically within 2 or 3 weeks before the lagging indicators hit the auction values, which take weeks in order for everything to adjust, like 60 days typically in the rears, because there's a lot of no sales that occur for that long. When that big $10,000, $20,000 drop happens, we saw the canary in the coal mine a long time ago. I think that dealers need to embrace different types of data, no differently than John was talking about. 80% of your inventory in bucket 1 and 2 is a non-negotiable and it's just doing a lot of things that are just, you're supposed to be disciplined about and you should have been doing anyway. But I would say the most important thing, if I'm a dealer right now, the scariest, most terrifying thing is Amazon, Hyundai, and Tesla's growth pattern is that's not a price competitiveness. It's not like more discounts and more of this and more of that is going to get you there. It's all about experience. And to Alex's point earlier, I think that most of the people that I talked to that own Tesla, they didn't buy it necessarily because it was an EV. They like the halo effect of Elon Musk and all of those sorts of things. But a lot of them, I've got somebody who works in my AccuTrade team who worked with me in retail. He got on the website to mystery shop them and ended up buying a Model S. And then I said, "You bought one?" He goes, "It was just so damn easy." He said, "Next thing you know, I get to the whole thing and the order was in." He goes, "Check this out. They're giving me updates and it's this." So imagine all the people that had an affair with an EV during COVID when they couldn't get a car. They bought a Tesla. They drive this car. It was the most amazing experience. Now they don't know if they wanted it. Now the 3 years is up, lease is up, whatever. And now they got to go back and get another ICE vehicle. They have to compare that experience to their
That's
experience.
what I was saying earlier.
Addendums over
MSRP.
MSRP.
Not just a different model. Yeah.
And all this massive friction, not to mention the fact that Tesla says, and we used to buy a ton of trades this way. And this is something that dealers that want ICE vehicles are missing this point, the boat completely. Tesla doesn't care if you trade in a car. And OEMs, captive OEMs, have made it more difficult to buy your leases out and everything else. They can't sell them to CarMax or Carvana, so they're at a competitive disadvantage because you got to pay the taxes and all the other things that go into it. Nobody's marketing to those people. If you made it as easy to sell somebody your car to a franchise dealer as it is to buy a Tesla, I would be buying the search terms Tesla trade-in process, or all those different things to be able to grab those trades as a conquest. But I think that the biggest challenge dealers are going to face is competing with that experience what's coming with Amazon and competing with all these EV companies, because their experience is just a lot less friction.
You know, we're coming up to towards the end of the session here. I want to get just a 60-second answer from each one of you. Jimmy, what do you expect to see in the market as we go through 2024? What might be something that dealers can expect to see in terms of maybe it's growth, maybe it's a shift in people's expectations, maybe it's valuation of EVs, maybe it's more dealers starting to embrace it? What do you think is one of the stories that we're going to be hearing about in 2024 with respect to used EVs?
Really great. Used EVs are absurdly affordable now already without tax credits. We have both, and we have ample supply. What we actually don't have a lot of is retailers who are actively participating as a percentage of the whole populace. And I get it. It's a different asset class. A lot of people have had bad experiences. There's opportunity cost to making that investment versus continuing to invest in a business that makes good money. There's plenty of reasons not to do it, but the opportunity is quite tremendous. However, the experiential and educational aspect of this cannot be ignored. But I think that educational piece is the most important. Not just because selling a used EV is a consultative exercise, oftentimes selling someone their very first EV, but the people on the front lines doing this work need the opportunity to climb that education ramp themselves if they haven't already, because the most authentic way of doing this is what John and Alex do, which is draw from firsthand experience, being an actual user of this product to help onboard somebody into that new ecosystem. Retailers who are interested in investing into that have an incredible opportunity on their hands between supply availability, the pricing at which it's available, and the airlift from tax credits.
Great, thank you. John, do you suspect as we go through the end of 2024 that maybe because of the lack of dealers that so far are embracing the used EV opportunity, that we're likely to see more EV autos and more recharge that are independents that are embracing and focusing on that opportunity?
100%
across the country.
Yeah. Pointing back to what Jimmy said earlier, like there's a climb in inventory in 2024 and it becomes more of a tsunami into 2025. And, also Jimmy just pointed out, like, it's not an easy ramp. It's not a switch that you go flip today that I'm going to be an EV dealer. Alex, myself are prepared, and there are others. And I think we'll be more prepared as we progress through the year to take advantage of the opportunity that, dealers have created by, not putting a lot of focus on the used EV space today.
Thank you, Alex. When you look at the new car market, the expectation this year is that we will continue the transition that started in 23, which includes significant margin compression that's placing downward pressure on net profit. And just in general, the new car market is going through some shifts that are not necessarily favorable. On the used car side, with respect to EVs, is it your opinion that this is going to be possibly the opposite and a positive growth, upbeat year on the used EV market for you?
For my personal business, or are you talking about the?
Yeah, I want to hear from your personal business perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, you asked about, are there going to be other, dealers popping up and people embracing this to John, and he said yes, and I totally agree. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a second and maybe a third EV auto standalone location. They're going to go open up in 2024. So
okay, so that's a pretty good indication in terms of A, you're bullish, B, feeling very optimistic, and C, we're likely to see some real positive growth this year.
Well, I mean, I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Literally.
That we've burned the boats around here, and so it's happening. And I do think, though, it's going to be bumpy and non-obvious. So it's not like, oh, the clouds are parting and the angels are singing, and so I'm going to open location 2 and 3. Ta-da! I think it's going to be a bumpy year. I do think it's going to be a growth year. I do think margins are going to increase, but I think it's going to be modest. I think, again, it's going to be non-obvious. But what I'm hoping for, what I'm betting on, is that if you look at all of the really big businesses in really big industries that came out of kind of traditional places. The reason that they were so big and have so much market share is exactly because it was not obvious. And so I am banking on a lot of dealers waiting and not embracing it. And by the time it is obvious, hopefully I'll have a brand and market share that is large enough to continue to win. And to be clear, I mean, yeah, John and I are sort of kind of really competitors, I guess, but there's room for lots of winners. And,
There are.
and so, whether I open 2 or 3 or 5, somebody else can do the exact same thing, but I'm hoping they do it a little later than I do. No question about it. And so, but the short answer to your question, I think 2024 is going to be a bumpy year. I do.
Thank you, Alex. Brian, I'll give you the last word, just 60 seconds. Based on what you're seeing on both sides of your business, the search side in the marketplace, as well as what you're seeing in real time on the used car operational side or the wholesale market, what's your expectations for this year when it comes to used EV specifically? Is it going to be a growth year in terms of volume, inventory? And B, do you think that this is potentially a tipping point this year for franchise dealers to make the decision to, if they're on the sidelines, to get off the sidelines and to perhaps make a full commitment to the used car EV market?
Well, I think it's important, just like with 44 million used cars being sold every year, to note how many of those are actually retail. I think it's like 14 million. So there's 30 million wholesale. So I think it's which side of that you're on. Are you on the wholesale side or the retail side? Because I think that you're on the retail side and you're the best end user, as Robert Hollinshead says, for that asset or that commodity. And just similar to silver, if you have a 1,000-gram block of silver, you can either make $70,000 with sewing needles, or you can make $6 million if you have the right person that can turn that into springs and gears for watches. And it's the same asset class that you're dealing with, but people have different uses. And Alex and John and Jimmy are obviously the best end users for EVs. So what they can do with EVs is different than what somebody else who could have something of value that could turn it into something might not know what to do with it. It's just like sitting with a block of silver. So I think it's the year of the best end user. I think that overall there's more units that are going to be coming into the market just because of the UIO, or units in operation. But I think it's more dealers should. I'm just skeptical that they will, but I think it's the genie's out of the bottle, and pretending that that's not happening or not figuring out, if I'm a dealer, I want to figure out what's my strategy 2 years, 3 years from now. Can I make money on service contracts, selling in-home services, electricians, partnering with, electrician guilds, all kinds of things like that. If you're not thinking about that, or thinking about selling insurance like Tesla, when a lot of these products and the cars regulations, FTC regulations kick in, they're going to get, punched in the mouth. And I'd rather be seeing where the puck is going than worrying about, trying to defend the goal.
But simply put, if we could wrap it up with this, franchise dealers, in your estimation, frankly, all of yours, would be wise. Those that do lean in and make the decision to be committed to the EV part of the used car business, ultimately, that's the winning strategy.
I don't see why you.
As long as you're not just dabbling.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, guys, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join. I absolutely loved what you shared. I'm sure everybody else will. And by the way, we're going to make it easy for anybody who's watching to be able to connect with Jimmy, with Brian, with Alex, with John, via LinkedIn or their email addresses. If you have follow-up questions, obviously this is a big subject and it's complex. It's not easy, but to Alex's point, I think you said it beautifully. Those who can perceive those opportunities that are not obvious, it's remarkable how many times they win. So on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to join and have this discussion on disruption in the EV side of the business. Thanks so much. Wishing you all the best and look forward to seeing you guys at NADA this year.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Be well.